If you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
Well, good morning to the world, those who are listening to the podcast today. This is Neely Fuller's Counter Racist Code Show. I am one of the co-hosts, Mr. Bobby. I'm going to introduce Gate in a few minutes, but he brought up a really interesting topic that we're going to have today, which is basically taking it to the street. And not the song that the Doobie Brothers sang, although it was good the way they said it, sang it, taking it to the streets. But this isn't the first time that something like this happened. But what those who use the tactics of manipulation didn't realize that what they have done is awakened the populace, not only here in the Northwestern Hemisphere, commonly called the United States of America, but also around the world. There are protests that are going on all over. Keep in mind that dictators don't last. It may seem like they do, and their regimes may seem like they do, but a friend of mine a long time ago told me that figures don't lie, but liars figure. This thing that they're doing is going to tumble down, and we will develop that. And we're happy to have you on board. And you can get in contact with the show by going to producejustice.com. You can also view us on the YouTube channel by YouTube at Produce Justice, and of course, Facebook at Produce Justice Neely Fuller Jr. We have, Gate has developed the area as we are still evolving, where now you can chat, and some of the chats will be read, and also you can be on screen now, and he'll give you the information to do that, because we want you to be on the show. Actually, you being on the show really, sincerely makes the show so much better. So much mail has been said about that. So join in the conversation on today's show. That being said, let me introduce Gate. Gate, good morning. How are you?
Mr. Bobby, I am still learning, as Mr. Fuller always used to say. And I will continue to learn as long as I'm on this planet. And I advise us all to continue to seek knowledge and learn as well. You are exactly right. We have an exciting show lined up today. The things are happening out in California. People are taking it to the streets.
Yeah.
And you're right, that song kind of sums it up. But they're taking it to the street for a purpose. They're in the act of what we call protest. And some may call it a march. Some may call it demonstrations. Whatever you call it, people are upset. They want to see change. And the question I put out today is protest, is marching, demonstrations, are they effective? Are they constructive? Or is this a constructive use of your time and energy? We're going to get Mr. Fuller's take on it. We're going to add our own 2 cents. And everything we say on this show is our own opinion. We adore Mr. Fuller. We have been followers of his. Mr. Bobby was his co-host for many years on Talktainment and then on Blog Talk Radio. myself. I was the producer of the show for 5 years on Blog Talk. And I've been working with Produce Justice for over probably about 12 years now, working in the book distribution, marketing, and of course, producer of this show and the previous shows. So Mr. Bobby and myself and the Neely Fuller family, Mark, we decided we're going to keep this legacy going because Mr. Fuller had a lot to say, a lot of constructive things to say. And we used his 3 books as guidance. He wrote 3 books. The original book in 1984. Then in 2010, he wrote the Word Guide. And he also wrote the expanded and revised edition of the book in 2016. You can get those books by going to producejustice.com. And you can follow the show and what we're doing at Produce Justice. We have some great things coming up, some things in the works, some original unreleased works of Mr. Fuller. And you can follow the past shows. You can see all of the shows by going to Produce Justice. We're also on Facebook at Produce Justice, at Facebook at Produce Justice Neely Fuller Jr. We're also on YouTube at Produce Justice, and we're also on Instagram. So what we've learned over the years from this information is that Mr. Fuller had some signature quotes. He described what justice is. Okay, we'll come back to that. So let's talk about our topic today, protests. Now, we have these protests going on out in California. And some people have asked, have protests ever worked? Has it ever worked? Is it just a waste of time? And what are the constructive results? And some people have even asked themselves, should we, as the Black community, set this one out? That this is mostly a protest of some of the policies of the ICE and these people that are going around trying to grab people off the street and send them back to their homelands, and that this is really not our fight. I've heard some people say that. Well, I want to address the second issue first, before we get to whether or not justice can be derived from protests and marches and things like that. There was a famous German theologian named Martin Niemöller. He opposed the Nazi regime during the 1930s, and he was sent to a concentration camp for his affiliation with the Confessing Church, and he opposed the state involvement in the church. When I say state, I mean the state of Nazi Germany. He felt like the state had no place in the church, and vice versa. Some of the same things we're saying today. And he made this famous quote that you've heard over the years being quoted. Some people have taken it literally. Some just picked up parts of it. I'm going to give the entire quote, and we can discuss it. He said, "First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then he said they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. He said they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then he said, then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me." So what Mr. Niemöller was saying is that you can keep pointing the finger and say, well, that's not my fight. That's somebody else's fight. We got our own thing to do. We got our own worries. And to some extent, I agree with that. But when you're dealing with fascism, white supremacy, and some of the other ills, can you really ever truly set it out? We can take that same statement and give it some context for today. We can say, first they came for the women and their rights. I did not speak out. But because I'm not a woman, they're not talking to me. We can say they came for the LGBTQ. I did not speak out because that's not me. I'm not LGBTQ. We can say they came for the immigrants. I did not speak out because I'm not an immigrant. So that's not my fight. But then what do you say when they come for you? Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. So I want to ask you today, are we on the verge of seeing a a latter-day version of what Nehemiah said back in during Nazi Germany reign. Or is this a bridge too far? Am I taking this and seeing something that's not there? I don't think so, because I've been seeing a shipping away. First, of women's rights. Of course, you say, "Oh man, of course they're doing that because so many women they've gotten too uppity and too." Then they look at the gay people. Well, I'm not gay. This is confusion, and yes, it is. It can cause confusion. It was a tool of the white supremacists. Then we look at the immigrants. But look at what happened. We have 12 countries that have been banned from this country, travel bans. 8 of them are actually African or Black-based countries, including Haiti, right on the doorsteps of the United States. So remember what Mr. White supremacy and racism is a global problem. It's a global issue. And some people say, we go back to Mr. Fuller's definition of justice. Guaranteeing that no one is mistreated. He didn't specify. He said guaranteeing that no one is mistreated and those that need the most help get the most constructive help. Now, some people can say that's Black people all the time, 24/7. But in a particular moment, somebody else might need help the most at that particular time. I'll take your comments. Well, seems like this happens every other show. Okay, let's move that off the screen for now. So what say you, Mr. Bobby? I'll get that, work on that issue.
Okay, I would say this, that in answer to your very first question, do protests work? The answer is absolutely, or yes. 3 examples quickly. And there was a walled city called Jericho, and it was basically the government, but they were persecuting the people, such as it is today. And Yahweh told his people to march around the city 7 times and that the walls would fall. Check that out, because that actually happened and they did fall. So yes, do protests work? Secondly, I was involved in the Cleveland area or the Huff riots in 1966. I was involved in it. And the so-called government sent the National Guard in to infiltrate and block the stuff that was going on with Black people in the Cleveland area. I was a part of that. They had already gotten permission with the 1952 Highway Act, in which they could go into Black communities by the freeway and set up those tanks and so forth, and the National Guard, which they did do. Now, what was the result of that? Programs of pacification, such as Job Corps, CETA, and a few others. Maybe what do you call that? With the Peace Corps, maybe that was part of it. I'm not for sure for that. But that's the second example. So yes, do protests works? And then thirdly, us, ourselves, when you decide to turn your life over to a life of being sanctimonious as unto God, yes, there's a change in you. That protest
Summer
works
2020, when a lot of things happened and things were televised.
Because you are, that's okay, you are against what you were taught that was wrong. So yes, in answer to your question, do protests works? And let me add a fourth one. The fourth one would be this. What you see happening in Los Angeles, remember the term focus groups or case studies? Well, that's what appears to be to me in Los Angeles, to see just how far they can go, which they being the current administration, which they could go with the use of threatening to use what? Martial law. It does seem that way. I'm not saying that it is the case, but it just seems that way, that could be on their agenda, which is part of Project 2025 and Agenda 47. I'm out.
Well, I'll say this as we still try to get Mr. Fuller's words. I'm going to try to paraphrase some of the things he said about protest and marching. I'm going to try it one more time before I get into paraphrasing lane.
Sounds like the usual suspects are at play again.
Yeah, here we go again.
Yeah, we need to probably move on from that.
Okay, this is what I think. If Mr. Fuller, one of the things that he said about protest.
And I was a part of these national protests, one out here in Los Angeles.
His statement was that does protest work? The first thing he said was, I don't know. He said, I don't know if it works. But he did go further to say that you have to try different things. Some people are fully sold on the idea of protesting.
But I asked myself one question that I'm about.
Yeah, we might need to retire that bad boy. It's not going to work today.
Yeah, it's not going to work today. Apparently, let me hold on a second. Hold 1 second, folks. Give us a second. This is produce justice.
You, Mr. Fuller,
I'm going to take a quick break. So hang on a second. Don't go away. I'm going to take a quick break.
If you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war.
All right, we're back. Okay, we were trying to get Mr. Fuller's quotes up on the screen, and I was going to paraphrase some of the things that Mr. Fuller said about protest. And in a nutshell, he said that protest, like many things under the system of justice, does it work? He asked the question, does it work? And what he came back and said that one piece of evidence is that the system of racism, white supremacy is still here. So it hasn't worked yet. And that was the first point he made. It hasn't worked yet. We've been doing it for a long period of time, almost as long as we can remember. But the system of racism is still here. He went further to say that just because something hasn't worked doesn't mean that it won't work. You might do it the first time, it didn't work. Second time, it didn't work. Third time, it didn't work. Fourth time, it might work. So just because it hasn't worked in the past does not mean we close the book on something that has the possibility of working. Now, I would say this. I can give you another take on it. And I do apologize to the audience for this video not coming on today. That sometimes when it comes to protest and marching and demonstrating, you have to let people know that you're not happy with the status quo. Right now, we have a lot of keyboard warriors. People go on Facebook and TikTok and Instagram, and they're just protesting up a storm. But does anybody see that? You're preaching to the choir. You're preaching to your followers and to the algorithms of people like yourself. But are the people in power, or the people who are able to affect change, are they seeing it? And do they even care? But protest in person, protest on the ground, or as we said, taking it to the streets, it does let people know that you're not happy with the status quo. Now, will that change the minds of the people who are in power? Well, I might say minimally at best. But what it might do, and this is something they may not have calculated, as we go back to Nehemiah's quote, What about the collective power? If you are galvanizing, if protest serves no other purpose than to galvanize those people, those other people who have been ostracized, who have been marginalized, who have been discarded. If you can galvanize these different entities, these disparate groups, and bring them together, I say protesting is not a waste of time. It's not a waste of energy. It's a long game. It's part of a long game. Now, if you're just looking at it to go out there and make yourself put on a nice t-shirt and build a nice sign and go home and say business as usual, then that's short-term thinking. But if you're thinking about the long game of galvanizing these different groups and using their collective strength, then I say, no, it's not a waste of time. It's not a waste of energy. And we invite you to join the conversation. We have put the, I'm going to put the link again into the chat area where you can come on board and state your piece. And we'll also read some of the quotes. Now, Mr. Fuller has, he's written these 3 books. You can also, like I said, go to producejustice.com and follow this show. And we're going to read some of the questions, some of the quotes from the screen. Sassafat says protests are considered lawful when peaceful, while insurrections are violent and unlawful. Now, what we have witnessed, Mr. Bobby and audience, we're witnessing a rank hypocrisy. I remember a few years ago, back on January 6th, where we witnessed, you might call it a protest. In stronger terms, it was an insurrection. And we saw they've been called everything except children of God in a positive way. They've been called patriots. They've been called all of these things to soften the impact of what they actually did when it was actually insurrection. And nobody was ready to say that at least the president was not willing to say that that was an attack on the country, that this is an invasion. But suddenly, when it's people of color, suddenly now we have an invasion. We have the need to call out the National Guard and the military. One of my things is that you can agree with me or disagree with me, but one thing I try to be is consistent. I have a deep aversion to hypocrisy, where you apply a different set of rules to different people and to different circumstances. It goes back to the show we did a few weeks ago on the Constitution. Well, the Constitution is great to certain people as long as it favors them. But they can't overlook that line in the preamble where it says the Constitution is to install a system of justice. And that's where the code book and the Constitution is very much in a line. Mr. Bobby.
Yes, sir. Do protests work? Fuller says what you just said that he said, but I would say this, in some aspects I would disagree with him on that particular or section of that point, and I will use this as a point of reference. Have you, Gate, or anybody ever heard of the Safe Bus Company?
Can't say that I have.
Okay.
Bus Company.
The Safe Bus Company was a significant Black-owned transportation operation in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, from 1926 to 1972. It was established to provide transportation for the African American community who were excluded from white-owned public transportation at the time. By 1968, it was the sole public transportation provider for Winston-Salem's African American residents. In 1972, the Winston-Salem Transit Authority purchased the company and its assets. So, in short, do protests work? Yes, because black folk in particular in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, were excluded from riding on the white transportation. So the black people in protest got together and formed their own company, the Safe Bus Company. It's documented. You can look this up. It was so successful that the ridership overwhelmed the white company, so much so that they tendered them or proffered them an offer to purchase the company, which they did. And we have it today. The same way, to bring it up to relevance, about FUBU. You remember the brand FUBU? For us, by us. All right. Yeah, well, look what happened. It was so successful. And the brothers, and I don't blame them, they became millionaires, almost billionaires. They sold that company on goods that we were wearing almost as rags, shoes and so forth. And look at that. So yes, protests do work if they are done in a constructive way. And this is done in the system of injustice or white supremacy, but it can work. And yes, it will take time. It's a process, little baby steps, but it will work. So yes, protests do work as we are on our way to the dismantling of white supremacy.
Well, I know when I came up, it was understood because we didn't really have any other means of redressing grievances. Yes, we did take to the streets. We marched, we protested, and I think as we got older and more means became available, and may have been, like Mr. Fuller said, some people start to feel like, is it actually working? And he would go back, well, according to the evidence, it hasn't worked yet because we still have racism, white supremacy. Now, that doesn't mean it's because something hasn't worked. Sometimes when you're up against a very formidable foe, it just takes time. I think about some of the struggles that have taken place over the years, down through the ages. And some of these things have gone on for generations, and they prevailed in the end. We look at what happened in South Africa. We saw the dismantling of apartheid. Of course, that was a different kind of struggle. But my point is, just because something hasn't worked in the last 10 years or last 20 years or last 30 years, look at this country. This country is not, when you look at the timeline of civilization, these United States, it's almost like a baby. But it took some type of protest, some type of opposition for this country to be formed, and it took a while. So I'm of the mind that I believe that protest in general has its place. Also, protest it's not just one cookie cutter approach. It's not just the facade it has many different faces. Like I say, some of the younger people take their protests online. We've seen financial types of protests where people decide to withhold their money until they see change. So we can look at protests as in its generic sense. And Gerald Lawson and Still Learning have put up several definitions of what protest constitutes. But what are you supposed to do when you are being bombarded with injustice and you have rights that are being stripped away, privileges being denied? And just because you don't see it on TV, you have to look at what's happening in Congress. Some people say, they ask the question, should we even be bothered with government? Should we just take our ball and go home and say, let's go start our own community? Let's just support ourselves. Yes, we should support ourselves. Yes, we should. There's certain things that we should not engage in that's non-constructive. But, and this almost goes back to the conversation we had on reparations. When you look at the amount of money that comes through this government, Now, some people say, okay, let's just go support the nonprofits and the churches and the non-white institutions in our community, and let's build our own. Let's go out here. We're not going to depend on or get on the government wagon. Well, I'm speaking now from my economics and finance background. If you just look at the amount of money that this country has accumulated, and when you're talking about comparing what we can do as a community, if we corral all of the groups we're talking about, the churches, the nonprofits, the Black businesses, and put them all together, it is just a drop in the bucket into the wealth and spending power of this government. You put all these forces together on the side, that might constitute one government contract. But you look at what the Defense Department can spend, the Education Department can spend, the Social Services Department can spend. We have to get a piece of that pie. Yes, continue to support the businesses in our community because we need that mindset. We need that collective thinking. But never take your eye off the money, the resources that we earned. That's not their money. Those are not their resources. That is ours as well. And it would take us another 100 years to marshal the type of spending power that it takes to redress and address the needs of our community that we are seeing right now. So the short path is to make sure that what's entitled to us, what's owed to us, comes to us. And that's why we see people protesting. They're not just protesting for protesting's sake. They're saying, give me mine. I've earned this. My family earned this. My ancestors earned this. So I believe in some form of protest. I don't believe in violent protest because I think that works into the hands of the people who are trying to oppress you. It's not going to be a fair fight if you decide to take that route. What's going to happen? Some people are going to get hurt. Some people are going to get killed. We're going to see martial law. We're going to see even more dismantling of privileges. That's the playbook. And I think that's what they're trying to invoke, to instigate. So yes, there's a lot of strong opinions about this, but I'm going to go back. I tried.
Yeah. Again, I like I said before, I think that you should bury that because it obviously is not working for today's program. But let me say this: you asked a question that does need to be answered. And the question was, does this? How do we do this? Does it work? Well, yes, it does work. Now, the question is, out of those many things that you did in your soliloquy, what are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do? Well, to start off with words from Neely Fuller is to do what? To tell the truth. It's real simple. Tell the truth. Tell the truth. It doesn't seem like it's much, but when you tell the truth will defeat any lie. It will take a process, but that's how you do it. Because if you don't do that, all you're going to be doing is what we've been doing for a long time, is talking loud, but saying nothing, because you're never at the starting block. You have to start by telling the truth to yourself and to others, and protecting the truth by telling the truth. It's going to hurt some people, but it's also going to heal some people. That's how you start it, Gay. You start by telling the truth. You can have all your economic factors, all your worldly factors, or all the factors in the 9 areas of people activity. But if you don't tell the truth, all you're doing is just standing there holding yourself. Nothing's happening. And the people who want to take advantage of us continually do, with all their acronyms, with all their programs that they know are wrong, like what's going on now. but they're doing it anyway. See, you have to start by telling the truth. Just as simple as that.
Yes. As I'm stating again, this is the Counter Racist Code Show, Neely Fuller's Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Bobby, and I'm Gate, and we are here to keep the conversation going. I was talking to a very well-known scholar. Matter of fact, he was on the show that we did. We did a tribute show on Radio 1 back in February, and this scholar came on the air. He called me one day after the show went off because I was one of the guests on the show. And he said that he was very proud and happy that this show is continuing. And he said, unfortunately, he's seen many Black scholars, very well-known people, that when they left this earth, their quotes, their legacies, their thoughts went with them. So whether you believe or like what we're saying, or agree with us or not, if you ever listen to Mr. Fuller's Counter Racist Code Show, and I do encourage you to do that, to go back to producejustice.com, not everybody that called him Mr. Fuller's show agreed with him. Matter of fact, there was a couple of knockdown drag out. Now, he wouldn't argue with you, but there were some people that called in and said, some people that knew the code better than Mr. Fuller knew the code. They be arguing Mr. Fuller about his own code, which really made no sense to me.
That's why he instituted VGQ. He gave them that right to be against this show. You know, victims guaranteed qualifications. Yeah, so but it's okay because it's all part of presenting and breaking down or dismantling the system of racism, white supremacy. It has to be. They have to be able to be against it if they are against it, or for it if they are for it. But make sure, just like today, make sure that you're speaking from a referential standpoint where people can go back and look at it. Now, they don't have to believe it, but at least from a referential standpoint, they have something that they can look at. Again, they don't have to agree with it, but it's the protocol of how to do it, because there is a way to do things instead of just talking, or like that song said, talking loud and saying nothing. That doesn't mean anything. Have some references to back up whatever it is that you are talking or speaking about.
Got a question on the board. Is this weekly Counter Racist Code meeting equivalent to going to church? Strong belief followed by action expression. Well, let me put it this way. Whether it's going to church or not, what I do think we have to do as a people is that you have to stay abreast, informed. You need to follow some type of instruction. You can call it a code, you can call it doctrine or whatever, but you just can't be out here nilly-willy wandering aimlessly.
That's just what I said.
Yeah, so you have to, and like Mr. Bobby just said, you have to seek the truth. So there may be some parallels between what we're doing and going to church or some type of religion, but it's not, we wouldn't call it a religion. Go ahead, Mr. Bobby.
Yeah, I was going to say, since that person brought up church, as Mr. Fuller would say, church, what is church and how does it work? Well, if you are really serious about that question and you begin to research that question, then you will discover by reference that you are the church. What reference? 1 Corinthians 6:19. 6:19 will give you that instruction that you are the church, that gift that God put in this human body. Yes, you are the church. You make it work through the teachings and believings of the Creator. That's how it works. Many will reject that because they reject the Creator. But that's what the church is, not the brick and mortar. The brick and mortar is, since you use church, we've been brainwashed to think that that's the church. It's only for the assembling of people of like precious faith. And it is a place that you may want to and should visit, but you are the church. Now, what are you going to do about that?
Hey, I like that. Mr. Louis, wrote up a good comment. He said, interesting comment. He said, protest is not mentioned in the code book, but it can be seen as VGQ. As a matter of fact, one of those videos that I was going to play, Mr. Fuller actually said that. He said protests or people who choose to protest can be seen as a form of VGQ, which stands for Victim Guaranteed Qualification.
Yes.
Now, one of the things Mr. Fuller was very adamant about, and this was like, he probably mentioned it on every other show, VGQ, that means Black people, non-Black, non-white people shouldn't be arguing among themselves on the best way to dismantle racism and white supremacy and to seek justice. Is that we all have a right. As victims, we are guaranteed a right to speak our piece. Now, I admit, I've been like a justice warrior, if you want to call it that, most of my life, and I've taken different tactics at different times. When I was young, I mean, I was one of those folks I was the first one to get on the street when we said, take it to the streets. You said, let's go. I'm ready to go. I've joined various organizations. I've paid money into different organizations. I've engaged in economic types of protests. I backed certain people who were aligned with my beliefs. But one thing I have done, I've tried to be consistent, and I've always tried to find the truth. Even some of the most virulent racists, believe it or not, what is those thing? A clock is right two times a day.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So I think to move this ball, you have to agree with people when they're telling the truth and disagree with them when they're not telling the truth. I think that's the only way we're going to find justice.
Yeah.
Because you could be following. Go ahead, Mr. Bobby.
No, you go ahead, finish. I'll come.
You can be following someone that you agree with most of the time. But if somewhere in their logic, you feel like the truth is broken down, you need to break away and say, I agree with the person, but I don't agree with this. Because you're going to be constantly aligning yourself throughout your life. This is called growth. You're going to be aligning yourself with different people and different causes and different ideologies based on what's happening at the time. When I was coming up, we were fighting, believe it or not. I wasn't personally fighting for integration because I didn't know enough about it, but I was fighting for justice, and just so happened at the time, integration seemed to be the card of the day.
Yes.
Well, now in retrospect, we look back and say, well, maybe that wasn't what we needed at that particular time. But Mr. Fuller said, we don't know. He said, when we asked him the question about protests, he said in both of these recordings that I was going to play today, he started out both by saying, I don't know. In other words, I don't have a crystal ball to look down the road to say that it's going to work forever. It hasn't worked yet because we still have this system.
Yes.
But he said maybe the fourth or fifth time you do something, it might work.
Exactly, because it's a process. It's not going to be like Samantha in Bewitched, Twinkle Your Nose, and it just changes like that. It's a process. Even like I said before earlier, I was part or involved in what happened up in Cleveland in the Huff riots in 1966, and that did, as a process, affect change, which I mentioned different programs of pacification, although Job Corps, CETA, I think the Peace Corps, and other programs that they had. But look who was in charge of it. But it basically was that to cool down the Black folks that had been mistreated, and particularly in Cleveland, the Black community and what they had done. But in 1970, I was a student at the Ohio State University in May of that year when the protests at Kent State went down, 4 dead in Ohio. I was there when the National Guard came in and shut down the campus. I was there. What was that? Protesting the war in Vietnam. And I got a lot of theories about that. But it did eventually work. It took a process. But the students We protested against what was really going on because it was a distraction to do what? To benefit those who stood to gain the most of it by profit. Oh yeah, that's what it is. Distractions.
All right. Once again, we invite you if you want to come on camera and speak your piece. I put the link into the feed, and we'll be glad to bring you on board.
Yeah, look what Still Learning said. Yeah.
And thank you again for the comments that have been coming in. Some of you have really been, I can tell you've been following the code. I can tell that you are really in tune with what's happening. Your head is definitely not in the sand.
You're right.
So what we just try to do here is to make sure that we keep you abreast of what's going on. And we try to take these various topics that come up and run them through the code. Now, of course, we're not going to get it perfect every time, because sometimes some of the things are subject to interpretation. That's why Mr. Fuller wrote 3 books and not 1, and he put out a word guide. I did look in the word guide for protest and march, and he didn't address that. It seemed like a subject Mr. Fuller he didn't have a lot to say on. He ran it through the general terms of, if it works, do it. If it hasn't worked yet, and if it hasn't removed the system that we're dealing with, then that doesn't mean it's not going to work. He's just saying it just hasn't worked yet.
Yes, and he also mentioned the importance of the use of words. Words. Malcolm addressed that too when he talking about this being revolutionary. He said you have to be cautious when you use that word, because you cannot have a revolution without what? Bloodshed. You got to be careful about that. And if that word is invoked, as you used earlier, invoked, then there's going to be some bloodshed. That's revolutionary tactics, but it will result in a change or part of the process of dismantling, because freedom is not free if there's no bloodshed.
That's exactly right. So when some people are saying, what are the takeaway items for today? What are the call to action? I'm going to say be vigilant. That's going to be one thing I'm going to say off the top. Don't give up on something. If you have look at the ends and not necessarily the means. So the end is justice, the attaining of justice. The means are these different ways we can get there.
Yeah.
Protest, going online, boycotting, withholding money, supporting certain individuals and joining certain organizations. Don't get so caught up on the means that we forget about the end. And I think that was another, like I said, I'm trying to interpret what Mr. Fuller has been saying. He's saying, he just keeps saying, find justice, almost like by Malcolm said, by any means necessary.
Exactly. And let me say this, Gay. No matter where you are at, you are in the DC area. I'm here in the Ohio area. There's some people that are out in California, all over the place. Well, there's a city in this state called Cincinnati. Do you know that there's more than one way to get to Cincinnati, depending upon where you're at? I asked that question because there is more than one way to get to Cincinnati. You start wherever you at, and the starting point is at the truth. That's the way. That is the way to get to where you're going. What is our objective? Is to dismantle the system of racism, white supremacy. How do you do it? Take that first step. Tell the truth wherever you're at. Just real simple. Tell the truth.
All right, we have somebody in the room. I'm going to put you on the stage. I don't see your face, but I'm going to put you up anyway. And let's see. You're on the counter racist code. Mr.
Good
Fuller, put on
morning.
racist code. Welcome to
Good
the
morning,
show.
gentlemen. I'm a fan of the show. I was listening to it for a little bit, even when Mr. Fuller was living. I mean, going back listening to some old episodes. I didn't start listening to Mr. Fuller until 2014. I didn't even know who he was, and it really started to change my views about racism, because I was under the belief that racism was the belief that one's race was superior to another. But then when I went back and analyzed the logic and understood that white people who practice racism, they use broad and ubiquitous terms.
That's right.
That is where the confusion lies, is if it's broad and ubiquitous, like in laws, like the Constitution, for instance, they will say, well, everyone is equally protected under the law under the 14th Amendment. Okay, but who is enforcing that law? And how is that law being enforced?
That's brilliant. But, you know, what I would say, I ask anybody to go back and look at the Southern strategy and look at how they use words to mask their dastardly deeds.
Yes.
And you almost need a code book. And they're speaking in code to each other.
They are.
Unfortunately, sometimes they're speaking over the heads of the folks that they're actually demonizing and putting these policies in place to marginalize. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's cool. But about protests, well, I have the original code book from '84, and one of the things it said in the area of politics is do not participate in riots. And that's one of the things I've learned is protest it has not worked. If you're non-white, protest doesn't work for you. Because if you clearly see the aggression that the white supremacists are doing on those non-white people in California, white power does not care about laws. It cares about power. And you know, I try to tell a lot of non-white males this who are so-called conservative. I'm like, listen, they don't see you as one of them. They see you as a stepping stone. Like, okay, thank you for giving us. We already have the power. We don't really need you. But in our electoral politics, you need coalition voting to win. And thank you for your vote, but we no longer need you. So, you know, I think for the fact that a lot of young people that I've come across, a lot of their parents don't teach them about racism at all.
Right.
And they think, and I have a personal story with that as well, because, you know, my late brother, he has offspring with a white person. And I remember having a conversation with his father. And I said to him, okay, well, what are you going to teach this non-white child about race and how that functions? My stepfather looks at me and says, he already knows. He knows what? He'll figure it out. So, wait a minute. You're the grandfather and your son is the father of him. And y'all never had these discussions? Like I said, he'll figure it out. When he's dead, when he gets killed, that's when he'll figure it out, because he won't have a chance to figure it out. He'd be gone. And it gets frustrating sometimes dealing with Black people in particular, because Black people themselves are kind of stuck in this Jesus knows the way, Jesus is the way kind of thing, but not realizing that Jesus was used against us to justify our subjugation. And I often worry about not white people overall, but definitely Black people. I worry about where our stats will be 20, 30, 40 years from now in the United States of white supremacy. Where would we be? Because if we're not awake by now, if this doesn't get us attention now, what will get us attention? Another Black boy being killed? What will get us attention to get on to get serious about this problem? What is it going to take?
Wow, brother, appreciate your input. You're right on point. Very poignant points you made today. I enjoin you to stay tuned, stay on code, come back, and anytime you want to come back on the show, just come on. We'll bring you back on. Okay.
Much appreciations.
Appreciate you, bro. All right, that was Wood. Made some very good points. We have Six Nations over there saying she wants to come on, getting her words together. I told her, come on, got 5 minutes. If we don't get you today, take your time and come back next week, and we'll actually have a little more time to work you in. But if you come in the next few minutes, we'll still put you up here on the screen. Mr. Bobby, we're coming down to the end. Any final words?
Yeah, just producejustice.com, staying on code and tell the truth.
All right. This is the Mr. Fuller's Counter Racist Code Show. What I invite you to do is to go to producejustice.com and follow the show, follow us on our platforms, and also like this show. Hit the like button and subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and share it. And we want to bring some more thought, some more brain power, some more perspectives to the stage. And we want to hear what you have to say. This is normally we have some technical issues today where we can bring more people onto the platform, but we have some, like what we call the usual suspects at play. But we'll be back next week, and hopefully some of those problems will be worked out between now and then. So we invite you once again to join us on this weekly show from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. on every Tuesday. In the meantime, stay tuned to producejustice.com. Go to the website homepage. You can watch the show right on the homepage if you don't have social media, or you can watch it on your favorite platforms such as YouTube, such as Instagram, such as Facebook. So that's going to wrap it up for today, and we will see you next week. And as Mr. Fuller said, let's find justice. And Mr. Fuller's definition of justice is don't mistreat anyone, guaranteeing that no one is mistreated, and guaranteeing that those that need help the most get the most help.
Get the most constructive help.
Most constructive help. Thank you, Mr. Bobby. The most constructive help. And on that note, we will see you next week.
If you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
I give a straight up answer. If the code says, if I don't know something, I say that's the first thing I say. I don't know. There are people who say that it does most of the time. There are people who say they don't do no good at all. There are people who say, well, it works sometime. Not most of the time, but sometime. So I just take people at their word based on their experience. You protested, meaning you were doing something, and you wanted a certain result. So I say, did it produce the result that you wanted? And that's my question. So no one can answer that question except the person who, according to the code, a person who says, well, I'm going in protest, and I think my objective is to have people go along with my point of view as a result of me taking part in that protest. It's something I wanted. Did I get what I wanted? That's the main thing. All right? First of all, you make up your mind what it is you want. You got to know what you want before you go, or you should.
I'm not sure if you're aware of that, Mr. Fuller, but that's coming up this weekend. So my question is is marching according to the code way to achieve results?
I don't know. I do know that the system of white supremacy is still here. So no one yet has solved what we call the race issue. Neely Fuller said he's trying, but trying, well, they used army terms, like something I was told by a sergeant when I was in the military, this particular time in the Air Force. He says, Fuller, he said to me, Fuller, I don't want to know how hard you've been working, because you come in here telling me about how hard you and your crew been working. I just want I want you to show me the result. Now get out of here and get back to producing the result. Don't come in here giving me no report ever about how hard you've been working. The hard work is nothing new. Results, that's something new. Now, it made me angry, but I've thought about it down through the years, and he was correct. So in answer to the question, does marching help to solve the problem of race? We know it when it solves the problems of race. That's the only criteria, if you want to use that criteria. Now, as a victim of racism, I cannot criticize what other people do or choose to do or wind up doing some kind of way to resist racism. That comes under something called BGQ. Anything that they say, and marching is a form of speech. So people can try anything, and they can try it, and it so-called fails, and try it again, because I've seen evidence that people have tried things, solve problems. They try one thing, and they try the same thing again, then the same thing again. And then oddly enough, sometimes doing the same thing, even though they say when you do the same thing and you keep failing, you need to try something else. But sometimes you can do the same thing, and the same thing, and the same thing, because conditions sometimes change too. And it will work that fourth time when it didn't work the first three times. Mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Racism, because white supremacy is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. I'm going to say that again. If you do not understand white supremacy, racism, what it is, what is white supremacy, and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Now, that might be, sort of a comic quip, if you want to look at it, called loosely the race issue. Because if the race issue, by whatever definition you want to give it, is the key to solving all other problems. You solve that problem, and I have a slang expression that if you solve the race problem, all the other problems in the world you can solve on your day off. If you do not understand white supremacy, what it is
and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time.